In 1995, something impossible walked through the doors of a Kingston family court. A man with motor oil on his hands and holes in his pockets came to adopt two black twin girls, and everyone in that room knew he'd fail. His fiancée knew it. The social workers knew it. Even the judge looked doubtful. But 20 years later, those same twins did something that left an entire island speechless. Welcome, my beautiful family. Before we begin, please subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Your support will help us bring more wonderful stories. And trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's get into the story. The hearing took place in a sweltering guardianship office with cracked floor tiles and a rattling ceiling fan that did nothing but push hot air around. Files stamped removal and sibling group sat stacked on a metal desk. The twins stood silent, fingers locked together so tightly their knuckles paled. Social workers questioned how one unmarried man with grease still under his fingernails could possibly handle two children. Campbell didn't flinch. "Mina split dem come same belly," he said. The twins were a package, and separating them wasn't an option. After a grueling legal process, skeptical welfare visits, and Yvette handing back the engagement ring on the courthouse steps, the judge granted Campbell temporary placement. He worked double shifts, repairing buses by day, stocking shelves at night, stretching every dollar to cover toothbrushes, mosquito nets, school shoes, and crayons. Some nights he barely slept, but he never wavered. When a hurricane ripped the zinc roof off their single-room home, a social worker arrived expecting disaster. Instead, she found the twins dry under a tent of tarps, homework clipped to a clothesline, Campbell boiling water on a camp stove. Her report changed from concern to capable. Years later, temporary became permanent, and two frightened girls became Campbell's daughters. The twins grew up, each carving her own path. Isabella, once too scared to speak, discovered her voice in debate club and went on to study law, dedicating herself to keeping siblings together in the foster system. Sophia, the whirlwind of the pair, learned sheet metal work at Campbell's side and later became a civil engineer, designing community spaces that could withstand storms. Campbell never remarried, but he showed up for every school play, every graduation, every milestone. 20 years later, in 2015, his daughters surprised him with something unbelievable. They'd secretly bought and restored an abandoned depot near Halfway Tree, transforming it into a warm, storm-proof transit home where siblings in foster care could stay together from their very first night. They named it Yellow Ribbon House, after the bows they wore the day Campbell chose both. And they did more than build walls. They paid off Campbell's debts, funded a reunification program across Jamaica, and helped push through policy changes so no file could ever again recommend splitting siblings due to better odds of placement. Campbell, now gray-haired and weary but with shining eyes, stood in the reading nook painted the same mustard yellow as their childhood study corner and saw his private vow become a public legacy. This is that incredible story. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop a comment and let us know where you're tuning in from. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe. There's so much more inspiration ahead. But to understand how a man with nothing built everything, we need to go back to that humid morning in 1995 when Campbell stood outside the family court clutching a plastic folder and made a promise that would cost him everything and give him more than he ever imagined. The temporary placement papers gave Campbell 90 days to prove he could do the impossible. 90 days to turn a cramped single room into a home for three, and 90 days to convince the system that love could be measured in meal plans, clean clothes, and homework signed on time. He started with the space itself. The room was barely 12 by 12, with a window that stuck and a door that scraped the concrete floor when you opened it. Campbell pushed the two thin mattresses together beneath a mosquito net he'd bargained down to half price at Coronation Market. The twins would sleep there, side by side, the way they'd slept in the group home, never more than an arm's length apart. In the corner opposite the mattresses, Campbell painted a section of wall in leftover mustard yellow he'd gotten from a bus depot job. He stenciled the words "Lickle Stars" across the top in careful block letters, then installed a plank shelf for school books and a juice crate turned on its side for supplies. Pencils, erasers, a ruler, crayons still in the box. Below the shelf, he taped a hand-drawn chart with their names and gold star stickers waiting to be earned. The cupboard was the hardest part. Campbell couldn't afford new furniture, so he sanded down a battered wardrobe someone had left on the curb, painted it white, and used a wood-burning tool to etch Isabella on the left door and Sophia on the right. When he showed them, Sophia traced her name with one finger, eyes wide. Isabella whispered, "It stay there? Forever?" Campbell nodded. Forever. He learned fatherhood in increments, how to part hair into sections and twist them into passable ponytails. Though the first week, the twins came home with their ribbons redone by a teacher. How to make rice and callaloo stretch across 4 days by adding canned mackerel and dumplings. How to sing "Brown Girl in the Ring" off-key at bedtime until two voices, hesitant at first, joined his. But the system was watching, always watching. Ms. Bernard, the social worker assigned to their case, arrived unannounced on a Tuesday morning while Campbell was trying to convince Sophia that shoes were non-negotiable for school. She walked through with a clipboard, opening the cupboard, checking the mattress for bedbugs, running a finger along the windowsill for dust. Her face gave nothing away. "Next visit, I expect to see current medical records," she said. "Both girls, no exceptions." 2 weeks later, a neighbor, Mrs. Chen from downstairs, filed a noise complaint. "The children run too much. They shout. It's disruptive." Campbell apologized, installed foam padding under a rug remnant, and taught the twins to play Quiet Foot, a game where every step had to be silent as a cat. They loved it. Mrs. Chen's complaints stopped, but the incident went into Ms. Bernard's notes. School was another battlefield. Sophia was a whirlwind, talking out of turn, climbing on desks, trying to fix the broken pencil sharpener with a butter knife she'd smuggled in her backpack. The principal called Campbell 3 times in 1 month. Isabella, by contrast, barely spoke. She'd sit at her desk, eyes down, and wouldn't answer even when she knew the solution. Her teacher, Miss Gale, wrote, in careful script, "Bright child, needs encouragement to participate." Campbell built systems, a chore chart on the back of the door. Make bed, brush teeth, pack bag, help with dishes. Every completed task earned a star. 10 stars meant a Saturday treat. He took them on bus route picnics, riding the route he serviced, hopping off at Hope Gardens with tin foil-wrapped fried dumplings and sorrel juice in a thermos. They'd sit under a mango tree, and he'd quiz them on multiplication tables while Sophia collected fallen blossoms and Isabella sketched the fountains in her notebook. One Saturday, after a particularly good week, no calls from school, no complaints from neighbors, both girls scoring above 80% on their spelling tests, Campbell borrowed a Polaroid camera from a co-worker. He set the timer, sat on the gray couch wedged against the far wall, and pulled the twins onto his lap. They wore their pink dresses, the ones from court, freshly washed and pressed. The camera flashed. The photo rolled out, colors blooming slowly. Sophia giggled at her own face. Isabella held it like treasure. Campbell tucked it into the frame of the Little Star's mirror, where it would stay for the next 20 years. Then came the hurricane. The weather report had warned of a Category 2 moving up from the south, but Campbell had weathered storms before. He taped the window, filled every container with water, cooked a pot of rice and peas that could last 3 days cold if needed. By nightfall, the wind was screaming. By midnight, the zinc roof was rattling like a snare drum. At 2 a.m., it tore free. Rain poured in, cold and vicious. The twins woke screaming. Campbell moved fast, dragging the mattresses to the driest corner, stringing a tarp from wall to wall like a tent, weighing the edges with paint cans and his toolbox. He clipped their homework to a clothesline above their heads so it wouldn't get soaked. He fired up his camping stove, the one he used on job sites, and boiled water for tea, the blue flame steady in the chaos. "Why safe?" Sophia asked, teeth chattering. "Why safe?" Campbell promised. "Storm cyan touch we under here." By dawn, the wind had died. The room was a wreck, puddles everywhere, plaster sagging from the ceiling. But under the tarp, the twins were dry. Their homework hung like laundry. The camping stove still hissed softly. Campbell was boiling eggs for breakfast when the knock came. Ms. Bernard stood in the doorway, rain jacket dripping, clipboard in a plastic sleeve. Her eyes swept the room. The torn roof, the flooded floor, the mud tracked in from the hall. Campbell braced for the worst. This was it. Evidence of instability, unsafe conditions, removal proceedings. But then her gaze landed on the tarp tent. The twins inside, wrapped in towels, eating eggs from enamel cups. The homework on the line. The camp stove. The water containers lined up like soldiers. She stepped inside, careful where she placed her feet. "Mr. Campbell," she said slowly, "how long did it take you to set this up?" 15 minutes, ma'am. Maybe 20. She made a note. A long note. When she looked up, something in her face had shifted. "I'll file my report Monday," she said. "You'll need to get that roof repaired within 30 days. "Yes, ma'am." She paused at the door. "For the record," she added, voice softer, "most men would have panicked. You built a shelter." 3 days later, the letter arrived. Official seal, Kingston Family Court. Campbell's hands shook as he opened it. Hearing scheduled to review placement status. Date, November 18th, 1995. Outcome pending further evaluation. The twins, sitting at the Little Star's corner practicing their letters, didn't notice. But Campbell read that last line 5 times, stomach tight, and wondered if 15 minutes of competence under pressure would be enough to keep them. November 18th, 1995. Campbell wore the same borrowed dress shirt, washed so many times the collar had gone soft. The twins sat beside him on the wooden bench outside courtroom 3, legs swinging, not quite reaching the floor. Isabella gripped a folder containing their school reports. Sophia had insisted on bringing a drawing she'd made. Campbell, the twins, and a house with a roof that didn't fly away. Ms. Bernard arrived first, nodding once at Campbell before entering. Then Miss Gale, Isabella's teacher, in a church dress and her good shoes. Campbell's chest tightened. He hadn't expected witnesses. Inside, the air was thick with bureaucracy and old varnish. The judge, a woman in her 60s with gray locks and reading glasses on a chain, reviewed the file in silence. Campbell could see the tabs: medical, education, home visits, financial. Ms. Bernard spoke first. Your Honor, I've conducted 6 unannounced visits over 7 months. Mr. Campbell maintains consistent routines, adequate nutrition, and a structured learning environment. The children are current on immunizations. School attendance is 100%. During Hurricane Iris, I observed him manage an emergency with competence that exceeds many 2-parent households. She paused. My recommendation is permanent placement. Miss Gale was next. Isabella has transformed this year. She joined the debate club last month and delivered a 3-minute argument on why siblings should stay together in foster care. She researched it herself, used the library, cited sources. She smiled at Isabella. That child found her voice because someone gave her the safety to use it. The judge looked at Campbell. Mr. Campbell, you're still unmarried, still working 2 jobs. Your housing situation remains modest. Why should I make this permanent when a 2-parent family with more resources might be available? Campbell stood. His hands were steady, but his voice came out rough. Because dem need someone who choose dem first. Not because dem easy or convenient or come with papers already signed. Dem need someone who know dem, who knows Sophia Cyan sits still but can fix anything if you give her tools, and Isabella need quiet before she speak. But when she do, is pure truth. Respectfully, Your Honor, a big house Cyan replace that. The judge made a note, looked at the twins. Isabella, Sophia, do you want Mr. Campbell to be your legal father? Yes, ma'am, they said in unison, the way they did everything, together. The judge signed 3 copies, stamped each one with a heavy thunk. Permanent adoption granted. Mr. Campbell, these are your daughters. Isabella Campbell, Sophia Campbell. Congratulations. The twins tested the names immediately, whispering them to each other like a spell. Isabella Campbell. Sophia Campbell, grinning at the sound. Campbell pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, the same one he used to wipe engine grease, now washed thin, and pressed it to his eyes. The room smelled like motor oil and victory. Life after the paper didn't look much different. They still lived in the single room, still ate rice and peas on Sundays after church at Bethel Gospel, still stretched every dollar until it begged for mercy. But the fear was gone. No more surprise visits, no more letters with court seals, no more wondering if one complaint, one bad grade, one misdeed form could undo everything. Campbell took the twins to work on Saturdays. They'd sit in the depot yard while he repaired minibuses, handing him spanners and screwdrivers, learning the names of parts: alternator, carburetor, distributor cap. Sophia was a natural. Her small hands could reach bolts Campbell's couldn't, and she'd narrate every fix like a surgeon. This one stripped. Need WD-40. Wait, hear that rattle? Is the heat shield. Isabella preferred the office. Campbell's supervisor, Mr. Lowe, let her sit in the dispatch corner and sort invoices. One Saturday, a legal aid clinic was running a drop-in session in the community center next door. Isabella wandered over, came back 2 hours later with a pamphlet on tenant rights and 100 questions. The next week, she asked if she could go again. Mr. Lowe's sister, a paralegal named Miss Audrey, started letting Isabella shadow her during lunch breaks, teaching her how to fill forms, how to read contracts, how to ask the right questions. At school, Isabella's transformation accelerated. When her debate club partner, a boy named Marcus, confided that his younger brother might be placed in a different home, Isabella marched straight to the school counselor with a folder of printed articles about sibling separation and trauma. "It's illegal to split them if there's any way to keep them together," she argued, citing a statute Miss Audrey had taught her. The counselor made calls. The brothers stayed together. Marcus hugged Isabella in the hallway. She didn't pull away. Sophia's evolution was quieter, but just as clear. After the hurricane, she'd started sketching in a composition notebook. Roofs with better pitch, gutters that drained properly, walls reinforced with crossbeams. Campbell found the notebook one evening, flipped through pages of careful diagrams labeled in her round handwriting. "Stronger won't leak. Safe for wind." He didn't say anything, just left a ruler and a protractor on her desk. By the end of the month, she was drawing to scale. One Sunday, Campbell was getting ready for church when he reached into his pocket. The left one, where Yvette's engagement ring had lived for 3 weeks in 1995 before she'd handed it back. The pocket had been empty for years, a ghost weight he'd grown used to. On impulse, he slipped his key ring in. House key, depot key, toolbox padlock. The weight felt right. Different, but right. Not love lost. Doors opened. 15 years later, Isabella stood in the cramped records archive of the Kingston family court, her internship assignment slip in hand. Digitize guardianship files, 1990-2000. Priority: sibling cases. She was 22 now, in her 3rd year of law school, specializing in child welfare policy. This was supposed to be boring work. Scanning, tagging, filing. She pulled a box labeled 1990 sibling group cases and started flipping through. Halfway down, a file caught her eye. The names on the tab: Isabella and Sophia. Intake ID 95 SG 4047. Her hands went cold. She opened it. The first page was standard intake paperwork. The second page was a social worker's assessment. The third page, dated 2 weeks before Campbell walked into court, was a recommendation memo. Due to better odds of individual placement and resource allocation, recommend separation of twins into distinct foster homes. Siblings may maintain supervised visitation pending behavioral stability. Isabella read it twice. 3 times. Her vision blurred at the edges. Some stranger with a clipboard, had decided she and Sophia were easier to deal with apart, that their bond was negotiable, that better odds mattered more than the fact that they'd come from the same belly, slept tangled together every night, and would have shattered if torn apart. She pulled out her phone, texted Sophia. "You busy?" The reply came instantly. "Never too busy. What's wrong?" Isabella took a photo of the memo, sent it. 3 dots. Then, "Meet me at the depot, 1 hour. We need to talk." Isabella closed the file, but she didn't reshelve it. She held it against her chest, feeling the weight of the paper that had almost destroyed them, and the man who'd refused to let it. An idea, audacious and enormous, was already taking shape. Sophia arrived at the depot with paint samples still tucked in her work belt and dust in her hair from a job site in New Kingston. Isabella was waiting by the chain-link fence, the file folder pressed flat against her chest like armor. "Show me," Sophia said. Isabella handed it over without a word. Sophia read the memo once, lips moving silently. Then again, her jaw tightened. "They wanted to split us." 2 weeks before Daddy walked in. Isabella's voice was steady, but her hands weren't. "Someone sat at a desk and decided we were better off apart. That our odds mattered more than—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "If he hadn't fought, we'd have grown up in different houses. Different families. We wouldn't even know each other. Sophia closed the file, handed it back. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Sophia looked at her sister, and something shifted in her expression. Grief hardening into purpose. So we make sure it never happens to anyone else. What? We fix it. Sophia gestured at the file like it was a broken machine. You're the lawyer. I'm the builder. We fix the system that tried to break us. Isabella's breath caught. How? A place, Sophia said slowly, ideas forming as she spoke. Somewhere siblings can go from the very first night. Not temporary. Not maybe if we find room. Guaranteed. Together, always. Isabella's mind was already racing. We'd need funding, permits, ministry approval, a pilot program to change the intake protocols, and a building, Sophia interrupted. Central, accessible, stormproof. Her eyes lit up the way they always did when she saw a problem she could solve with her hands. There's that old depot near Halfway Tree, been abandoned for years. If we could get it, we'd need a year, maybe 2. Isabella was pacing now. I can apply for grants through the university. There's a children's advocacy fund that might cover part of it. And I know someone at the ministry, Miss Audrey's nephew, works in child services. If I draft a proposal for sibling co-placement as the default, I can draw up plans tonight, Sophia said. Flexible bunk rooms, privacy curtains, but open sightlines so no one feels isolated. Storm-rated roof, Category 3 minimum. Proper drainage, a space that feels like home, not an institution. They stared at each other, the enormity of it settling in. This is crazy, Isabella whispered. Daddy walked into court with no money, no plan, and no backup, Sophia countered. And he won. We've got degrees, jobs, and 20 years of knowing what it feels like to almost lose each other. We can do this. Isabella nodded slowly, then faster. We keep it secret. If Daddy finds out, he'll try to talk us out of it. Say it's too much, we should focus on our careers. We don't tell him until it's done. Sophia grinned, fierce and bright. 20th anniversary is next October. That gives us 11 months. 11 months to change the system. 11 months to say thank you. They worked in parallel, meeting twice a week at a patty shop halfway between Isabella's campus and Sophia's firm. Isabella drafted proposals in the language of policy, best effort sibling co-placement, trauma-informed intake, emergency sibling housing as a statutory right. She met with ministry officials citing studies on attachment and long-term outcomes. She called in favors from professors, attended budget hearings, and slowly, painfully, built a coalition of support. Sophia, meanwhile, haunted the abandoned depot like a ghost with blueprints. She measured every wall, tested every beam, sketched drainage systems, and load-bearing reinforcements. The roof would be her masterpiece. Galvanized steel, pitched at 30 degrees. Hurricane straps rated for 150 mph winds. Gutters that channeled water away from the foundation. No child would ever wake up to rain pouring through the ceiling. Not here, not on her watch. Inside, she designed bunk rooms that could flex, partitions on tracks so a room could sleep 2 siblings or 6, depending on need. The reading nook would be painted mustard yellow, just like Lickle stars, with shelves low enough for small hands and a window seat big enough for 2. She sourced lockers from a school demolition sale and labeled each one with a wood-burning tool. Spaces where children could write their own names, claim their own corners, the way she and Isabella once had. There were quiet tribute moments woven through. Sophia chose pink paint for the bathroom tiles, soft, not bright, like the dresses they'd worn in court. Isabella commissioned a local artist to create a mural for the entryway. 2 trees with intertwined roots and yellow ribbons tied to the branches. Neither of them said it out loud, but they both knew what it meant. You don't split what grows together. Campbell noticed something was different. His daughters were distracted at Sunday dinner, checking phones, exchanging glances he couldn't decode. When he asked, they deflected. "Just work, Daddy. Big project at school." He worried they were stretching themselves too thin, burning out, sacrificing too much the way he once had. But they were adults now, brilliant and capable. He had to trust them. In June, Isabella's grant application was approved, $50,000 from the Caribbean Children's Advocacy Fund. In July, the ministry issued conditional approval for the pilot program, pending facility inspection. In August, Sophia secured the depot lease with a down payment cobbled from savings and a small business loan. By September, construction was underway. Volunteers from Campbell's old church, workers from Sophia's firm donating weekend hours, a plumber who'd once had his own siblings split up and refused to charge for labor. On October 8, 2015, exactly 20 years and 1 week after Campbell walked into family court, the final permits cleared. The keys arrived in a padded envelope. Isabella held them up to the light, and Sophia laughed, loud and disbelieving. They drafted the note together, switching the pen back and forth until the handwriting was a braid of both their styles. "Daddy, come fiancée, we lickle surprise." Sunday, 2 p.m. Meet us at the corner of Hagley Park Road and Eastwood Avenue. Wear something nice. No questions, just trust us. Love. Isabella and Sophia. They slipped it under his door Saturday night, then sat in Sophia's truck in the parking lot, hearts pounding, waiting to see if the light would flick on, if he'd call, if he'd guess. The light stayed off. Campbell, exhausted from a long week, had already gone to bed. The keys sat on the table between the twins, catching the streetlight. 2 identical brass keys on a ring tied with yellow ribbon. "You think he'll cry?" Sophia asked. "He cried when the judge signed the papers," Isabella said. "And that was just about us. This is bigger. This is for everyone." They sat in silence, imagining tomorrow. The blindfold, the walk through the door, the smell of fresh paint and lemon polish, the reading nook, the labeled lockers, the children who'd one day sleep here, safe and unseparated, because a man with nothing once refused to split 2 girls who came from the same belly. "We did it," Isabella whispered. Sophia squeezed her hand. "We did it." And somewhere across the city, Campbell slept dreamlessly, unaware that in less than 24 hours, his private vow would become a public legacy, and 2 terrified girls in pink dresses would finally, fully, give back what he'd given them. Everything. Sunday, October 11th, 2015. Campbell wore his church shirt, the good one, navy with pearl buttons, and polished shoes that pinched slightly at the heel. The note had said something nice, and his daughters didn't make requests like that lightly. He met them at the corner of Hagley Park Road and Eastwood Avenue, where Sophia's truck idled beside an overgrown lot he'd passed 1,000 times without noticing. "What's all this about?" he asked, but Isabella was already holding up a folded bandana. "Trust us, Daddy," she said. "No peeking." He let them tie it over his eyes. Felt Sophia take his left elbow, Isabella his right. They guided him across gravel, up 3 steps, through a doorway that exhaled cool air and the scent of fresh lumber and lemon polish. Somewhere deeper inside, he heard children laughing, high, bright voices echoing off walls. Where? Shh, almost there. They stopped. He felt them step away. Then Isabella's voice, thick with emotion. "Okay, Daddy, you can look." Campbell pulled off the blindfold. He was standing in a wide, sunlit room with smooth timber floors and walls painted soft cream. To his right, a reading nook glowed in mustard yellow, the exact shade of the Lickle Star's corner from 20 years ago. Shelves lined the walls, already stacked with books. A window seat was piled with cushions in shades of pink and gold. On the center shelf, in a simple wooden frame, sat the Polaroid from the gray couch. Campbell and the twins, in their pink dresses, circa 1990s, faces pressed together, grinning at the camera. His breath caught. To his left, a hallway stretched toward bunk rooms visible through open doors, beds made with bright linens, lockers painted white, each one waiting for a child's name. A mural covered the entryway wall, 2 trees with intertwined roots and yellow ribbons fluttering from every branch. "What? What is this?" Campbell's voice cracked. Sophia stepped forward, her hands behind her back. "This is Yellow Ribbon House, a place where siblings in foster care can stay together from their very first night. No separations. No better odds if they're split up. Just safe beds, storm-proof walls, and the promise that no one pulls them apart." Isabella opened a folder, hands shaking slightly. "We have grant approvals. Ministry authorization for a pilot program that makes sibling co-placement the default across Kingston, with this house as the anchor. 50 beds, rolling intake, and legal support to fight any file that tries to argue separation is easier." She held out the papers. "It's real, Daddy. It's official." Campbell took the folder but didn't open it. He was staring at the yellow ribbons on the mural, at the reading nook, at his daughters' faces, both of them crying now, not bothering to hide it. Sophia pulled an envelope from her back pocket. "And this," she pressed it into his palm. "Your bus loan, paid off, every cent. Plus a reunification fund. We've seeded it with enough to help place 20 sibling groups over the next year, island-wide. No child loses their brother or sister because the paperwork says it's complicated." Campbell opened the envelope. Loan discharge papers. A bank statement showing a fund in his name with 5 figures in the balance. His knees went weak. He sank onto the window seat, the papers spilling across his lap. "But how, when—" "11 months, Isabella said, sitting beside him. "We've been working on it since last November. The grants, the permits, Sophia's design, the build, all of it." "You did this?" His voice was barely a whisper. "For me?" "For you," Sophia said, kneeling in front of him. "And for every kid who walks into family court terrified they're about to lose the only person they have left." Her voice broke. "You kept us together, Daddy. When the file said to split us, when everyone thought you were crazy, when it cost you everything, you said both. So now we're saying it too, as loud as we can, for everyone." Campbell looked at the keys still dangling from the yellow ribbon in Sophia's hand. He reached out, took them, held them up to the light. They caught the sun and gleamed like something holy. He started to laugh, a choked, joyful sound, and then the tears came, hot and fast. He pressed the keys to his chest and patted his left pocket, the one where Yvette's ring had lived for 3 weeks in 1995 before she'd handed it back. Empty then, full now, full of keys, full of daughters, full of a future, he'd built one stubborn choice at a time. "You name it after the ribbons," he finally managed. "We named it after you," Isabella corrected softly. "You saw two girls in yellow ribbons and chose both. This house does the same. Every time. No exceptions." The sound of footsteps made them turn. A small group had gathered in the doorway. Ms. Bernard, now retired, but beaming. Miss Gale, Campbell's old supervisor, Mr. Lowe. People from Bethel Gospel with covered dishes and folded linens. Someone had brought a crib. Someone else carried a box of books. A bus driver Campbell had worked with for 15 years held up a pot. "For Sunday rice and peas, when the first pickney dem come." Campbell stood, wiping his face with the back of his hand. "You all knew?" "For months," Ms. Bernard said, smiling. "Your daughters are very persuasive and very stubborn. I wonder where they learned that." 3 months later, Yellow Ribbon House welcomed its first residents, a brother and sister, ages 6 and 8, pulled from an emergency situation at midnight. Sophia was on call. She met them at the door with blankets, warm cocoa, and the promise that they'd sleep in the same room. The boy, suspicious, exhausted, asked, "For how long?" "For as long as you need," Sophia said. "We don't split up here. That's the rule." By morning, the storm that had been forecast arrived. Heavy rain drumming the roof, wind rattling the windows. But inside, the brother and sister were asleep in adjacent bunks, hands dangling over the edges, fingers almost touching. The storm-rated roof held. The drains channeled water away. The mustard-yellow reading nook glowed softly in the dim light. Campbell, who'd insisted on staying the first night, stood in the hallway watching them sleep. Sophia joined him, rested her head on his shoulder. "You built a good roof," he whispered. "I learned from the best." 6 months after opening, Yellow Ribbon House held a ribbon-cutting ceremony. The ministry sent a representative. The local paper sent a photographer. But the moment that mattered most was when Isabella and Sophia stood at the entrance with scissors. A length of yellow ribbon stretched between them. They cut it together. The crowd applauded. Then, quietly, Sophia pulled a second ribbon from her pocket, pale pink, narrow, carefully ironed, and tucked it beside the yellow one over the doorframe. "For the dresses we wore," Isabella said, her voice steady now, certain, "when you said both." Campbell stood behind them, one hand on each daughter's shoulder, and looked at the house they'd built from his vow. Children's laughter spilled from open windows. Volunteers unloaded donations. A caseworker arrived with a sibling group of 3, and Sophia greeted them at the door, already kneeling to their height, already promising, together, always. Love, Campbell had learned over 20 years, could be as quiet as a mosquito net stretched over 2 mattresses, as practical as a chore chart, as desperate as tarps rigged in a hurricane. But it could also be loud. Loud as keys turning in a lock, loud as policies rewritten, loud as a house that stood up and said no more splitting, not here, not ever. Either way, quiet or loud, practical or impossible, it did the same thing. It kept the two together. And now, because of one man who'd refused to choose between them, it always would.